Rain hammered the church roof like 1,000 fists, drumming louder than the thunder rolling over the canyon. The white gown clung heavy to her frame, mud creeping up the hem with every step she took down the wooden stairs. A veil whipped across her face, plastered by the storm, hiding the tremor in her mouth. The preacher had vanished. The groom had vanished. Only the bride remained, alone, soaked, standing beneath the rattling cross that swayed against the storm. A horse screamed in the distance, startled by the crack of lightning splitting the sky. The desert, starved for water, drank greedily as the dry road turned to slick clay. The air smelled of iron and dust, carried in gusts that cut through the hollow silence of the empty town. From the shadows of the wagon house, a pair of wide eyes blinked. A little girl, freckles dotting her pale cheeks, crept out barefoot into the rain. She tilted her head back, watching the bride sway in the downpour. The child's voice was thin but steady, cutting the storm. "You fell from heaven." The bride turned, veil dripping, gaze fixed on the child as though she'd heard prophecy. Behind them, shutters banged open and shut in the wind. A door groaned on its hinges, then slammed. No one stepped outside to offer shelter. Not a hand moved to comfort her. The town was watching from behind glass panes, too fearful to open their doors. The girl stepped closer. Her little feet sank into the rising puddles, brown water splashing her calves. She reached up, offering a small hand. The bride looked down at it. She did not take it. Another crack of thunder split the sky. This time, a horse's hooves echoed on the main road. The clatter grew nearer, louder, until shapes appeared through the curtain of rain. 3 riders, slick with mud, their hats pulled low. Shadows stretched from their forms as lightning lit the street white. The child froze, eyes darting to the figures. The bride did not flinch. She stood still as stone, veil trembling against the storm's breath. The riders reined in, boots scraping stirrups, spitting curses at the weather. One pulled a cigar from his lips, rain dripping off his mustache. He squinted at the church, at the bride, standing alone beneath the cross. "Lord Almighty," he drawled, voice rough as gravel. "What sort of ghost do we have here?" His companions laughed, thin and sharp, like knives scraping bone. The little girl clutched her arms tight against her chest. She whispered again, though softer this time, almost only for herself. She came from heaven. The bride's fingers twitched at her side, slow, deliberate, as though she were testing the weight of something unseen. Rain poured harder. The riders stared. The child waited. The bride stood, unmoving, white gown heavy with storm water, her silence carrying more weight than the thunder above. The mud had dried into cracked streaks along the street by morning, the sun burning away the storm as if it had never been. The town of Dry Creek breathed in the silence after rain, boards creaking, hinges moaning, whispers threading through doorways like smoke. Mary Lou walked down the main road, veil tucked back, gown stiff with dust. Eyes followed from behind curtains, from shaded porches where rocking chairs moved, but their sitters stayed still. A murmur trailed after her steps, some mocking, some pitying, none spoken loud enough to meet her face. Booth heels clicked from the saloon porch. A shadow leaned against the rail, hat low, spitting tobacco into the dirt. "Ain't every day a bride's left standin' like a scarecrow in a storm," the man drawled, his words loud enough for the street. Laughter rose from inside the saloon, quick and mean, then dulled as she passed without turning her head. Children watched from the livery stable, Clara among them, freckles bright against sunburnt skin. She waved, small hand high, lips moving around words too soft to carry. "Angel." The wind pushed dust in swirls across the street, carrying the groan of swinging saloon doors as they burst open. 3 riders stepped out, spurs rattling, eyes sharp and hungry. Silas Crane walked first, tall frame wrapped in a weathered coat, the glint of a silver buckle catching light. His men followed, boots dragging, laughter thin as whip cracks. "Town's too quiet," Silas said, voice cutting through the stillness. He shoved the barkeep back inside with a lazy hand. "Let's liven it up." The preacher stood frozen by the church steps, Bible clutched tight, lips pressed white. The sheriff sat hunched on a bench near the jail, hat tipped low, rifle leaning useless against the wall beside him. His fingers tapped his knee, slow and broken, eyes never lifting from the dirt. Mary Lou stopped at the well. She lowered the bucket, rope creaking, water splashing faint in the heavy quiet. When she raised it, Silas was already watching her, grin carved sharp across his jaw. "Well now," he said, strolling closer, rain mud still dried on his boots. "Bride without a groom. Looks like heaven forgot to claim you." His men laughed, teeth flashing, voices bouncing off the buildings. Clara's hand clutched the stable door, eyes wide on Mary Lou. The bride's gaze lifted, steady, veil fluttering in the wind. Her hands did not tremble as she poured water into the trough, each drop ringing against the wood. Silas's grin faltered, just enough to show he'd seen something in her stillness he didn't like. He spat in the dust, then jerked his head at his men. "Drink up, boys. Dry Creek's ours tonight." The townsfolk closed their shutters. The sheriff stayed seated. Clara whispered to the empty air, voice trembling with belief. She fell from heaven. Clara's scream echoed off the canyon walls, sharp as a hawk's cry, swallowed quick by stone and shadow. Hooves struck the dry riverbed, Silas Crane's men dragging the child ahead, her small arms thrashing against the saddle horn. Moonlight cut across their faces, pale blades flashing against grit and sneer. Mary Lou's horse thundered behind, veil torn, gown ripped open at the hem, white fabric trailing like a banner in the night wind. Her hands gripped the rein steady, eyes fixed, every beat of hooves pounding through her bones. The canyon closed around them, walls rising jagged and black, the smell of damp stone mixing with dust. Coyotes howled from the ridges, their cries shivering against the cold air. The outlaws slowed, turning, laughter bouncing cruel across the rock. Silas reined in, Clara pressed against his chest, his revolver drawn lazy as a snake's tongue. "Bride come chasing after her angel," he called, voice echoing cruel. His men circled, guns catching the light. Mary Lou slid from her horse, boots crunching gravel. She stood tall in the moonlight, gown clinging to her legs, veil whipping like a ghost shroud. No tremor marked her voice. "Let the girl go." The outlaws chuckled, trading glances. One spat into the dirt, the other cocked his rifle. Silas only grinned wider, his teeth glinting under the pale sky. "I remember you," he said, tilting his head. "Not as no bride, not as no widow. Iron Mary. Thought you was dead, buried in some battlefield dust." The men shifted, whispers of recognition crackling between them like dry grass set alight. Mary Lou's hand slid beneath the folds of her gown. The silver gleam of iron kissed moonlight as she drew the revolver, barrel black as midnight, polished from years long past. The canyon fell silent. Even the coyotes hushed. Silas's grin faltered for the first time. "Well, I'll be," he muttered, his pistol lifting slow. "The dead walk among us." Clara's eyes shone wide from his grip, her small voice breaking the quiet, trembling but clear. "You fell from heaven." Mary Lou leveled the gun, steady, veil rippling across her shoulders. She did not answer the outlaw. She did not speak to the child. Her silence was heavier than stone, sharper than thunder, older than the desert itself. One heartbeat. Two. The click of her hammer pulled back, cracked like lightning. The canyon braced itself for blood. Gunfire split the canyon, sparks flaring against stone as the first shot screamed past Mary Lou's veil. Gravel exploded at her boots, smoke burning in the cold air. She dropped to one knee, iron flashing, her revolver barking back with a thunder that echoed twice over. One outlaw spun sideways, rifle tumbling from his hands before his body hit the dust. Clara shrieked, Silas yanking her tighter against him, dragging her backward. His men fanned out, spurs clashing, muzzles flashing red in the moonlight. The canyon filled with fire, the sound a storm of metal and death. Mary Lou moved with no hesitation. She slid behind a jagged outcrop, veil catching, gown tearing wider at the seam. Her arms swung out, barrel steady, each pull of the trigger a rhythm, sharp, certain, final. Another outlaw pitched forward, his hat flying off into the dirt. Smoke curled thick. The air stank of gunpowder. Horses screamed, hooves scraping rock as they reared against the fury. Silas's voice rose over the chaos, hoarse and furious. "You should have stayed buried, Mary." His pistol cracked, bullet ricocheting sparks from stone inches from her head. "You ain't no bride, ain't no angel, just a killer wearing white." Mary Lou rose slow from cover, veil fluttering like wings torn from heaven. Her revolver glinted, barrel leveled. She stepped forward through the haze, boots crunching on broken gravel, face calm beneath shadow. Silas shoved Clara to the ground, drawing both pistols, arms spread wide. His grin was carved from madness. "Let's finish it, Iron Mary. See if heaven claims you now." The girl scrambled clear, eyes huge, crawling toward the rocks. Her whisper carried, fragile but certain. She came from heaven. The world narrowed. The canyon held its breath. Mary Lou and Silas faced each other, 20 paces apart, moonlight washing their shadows long and black. One blink, one draw. Her shot rang first. The sound tore the silence in two. Silas staggered, pistols slipping from his hands, body folding into the dust. His grin hung for a heartbeat longer, then broke as his face hit the ground. Smoke drifted. Echoes faded. The canyon went still. Mary Lou lowered her revolver, breath slow, veil stained dark at the edges. She stepped to Clara, lifting the girl in her arms, pressing her close. The child clung tight, freckles streaked with tears, whispering against her shoulder. "I knew you came from heaven." Mary Lou turned without a word, carrying her back toward the open desert. Behind them, the dead lay quiet, the moon shining cold upon the canyon floor. By dawn, Dry Creek would hear of it. The virgin bride who was left in the rain, who rose in stormlight and silence, who carried iron in her hands and heaven in her shadow. And the old storytellers would say, she was never seen again.